Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Cutting Edge Figure Skating Podcast. My name is Kim Dunaway. In this episode, I'll be recapping the men's event at the 2026 Winter Olympics. This event was wild, not just because the winner was unexpected, but the actual execution of both segments of the competition were a little underwhelming, I have to say. In the short program, out of 29 programs, only 6 programs were clean in that there were no negative elements in that program. That was Ilia, Adam, Torgashev, Marsak, Boyang, and Adam Hagara. Everywhere else, there were negative elements at least somewhere. There were a couple that were close. Kevin Amos, Denis Vasilyev just had negative GOE on spins, but they still had negative GOE in their program. If we go to the free skate, not a single program was completely clean. Every single program had negative GOE somewhere. And so it wasn't a really well-skated event. The ordinals were wild. When I talked in the preview episode about minning, this was exactly what I was referring to. If you look at the ordinals for the top 20, 21 skaters, just so much movement. Mikhail Shaidorov, who wins, 5th place in the short program, 1st place in the free skate to win overall. Shun Sato, 9th in the short program, 3rd in the free skate to finish 3rd overall. Stephen Gogolev, who finishes 5th here, was 10th in the short program and 2nd in the free skate. Peter Gummenik, right under him at 6th place, 12th in the short program and 4th in the free skate. Adam Siofa, 3rd in the short program, 12th in the free skate to finish 7th. Ilia Malinin, 1st in the short program, 15th in the free skate to finish 8th. Nika Agatsi, 15th in the short program, 7th in the free skate to finish 10th. Kalmura, 22nd in the short program, 10th in the free skate to finish 13th. Just wild and crazy movements. So much inconsistency from program to program, and that ended up with a bit of a unexpected result. Now, if we go back 11 months ago to Worlds, Ilia wins, Mikhail Shaidorov is 2nd, Yuma Kagiyama is 3rd, and coming out of that, this would not have been a completely crazy result with Mikhail Shaidorov winning gold. I mean, yes, anything other than Ilia, and we'll get to Ilia, don't worry, would have been a surprise. But Mikhail, with the arsenal of quad jumps that he has, we came out of that Worlds going, if there is someone who could challenge Ilia, it would be Shaddarov. It's not going to be next season, but perhaps in the season after the Olympics, we would get to see somebody really be able to compete with Ilia. But Shaddarov comes into the season and is very underwhelming in the fall. He got a silver and a bronze and kind of ekes in a Grand Prix final. He finished 6th, and he was a distant 6th. At Four Continents just last month, he was 5th behind Junwan Cha, Kalmura, who won, and 2 other Japanese competitors who aren't even here. So coming into the Olympics, Shaddarov wasn't really in the conversation just because we haven't seen anything from him this season to really show us that he could compete at the same form that he was competing at towards the end of last season. We had seen flashes already at this point last season. He came on really strong at the end of the Grand Prix. He just missed Grand Prix final in the 24-25 season, but when Adam Siohimfa withdrew, he inserted himself into Grand Prix final, had a good showing there. He went on to win Asian Games, 4 continents, and came into Worlds with a lot of momentum. That wasn't the case here. And even in the short program, he was 5th, but he was about where you would sort of expect, in a way, to be in that mix, this big, huge mix of people competing for what we expected to be in the bronze medal conversation. He comes into the free skate in 5th place. In the short program, he was clean, but he ended up with a quarter call on his quadlets, which was his quadlets triple toe combo, and that caused him to have negative GOE. Also had a couple of level issues as well. It was one of the better short programs that he's had this season. He's been scoring around 89, 90 points quite a bit. So getting a 92.94 here was better than what we had seen. It wasn't his best of the season, but it put him in the top 5. And after he went in the free skate, getting nearly 200 points, put him in a really good position to get on the podium, because coming behind him was Daniel Grassel, who was very inconsistent, Adam Siohimfa, who had about a 10-point lead on him, but is also extremely inconsistent. And 10 points is about the value of one quad without any GOE. So that's why you see such tremendous amount of movement in the men's, because a couple of quads here and a couple of quads there could make for 20, 25 points difference and could be 10 places in the standings. And so that huge number that he put up was definitely going to be worthy of a medal if any of those ahead of him faltered. And you definitely expected at least one of them probably to do that. But you didn't expect for all 4 of them to do that and for him to win. It's an incredible feat for him. For Kazakhstan, he's the second Kazakhstan skater to get an Olympic medal, following Denis Ten at the 2014 Olympics. But now they've got a gold medalist. And he's like Ilia, he's just 21. He's still got a lot to grow, especially in terms of the program components, Mark. And what an interesting potential rivalry that we could have going forward between him and Ilia, who we expect to continue after this competition. And it's certainly going to, I think, give him a lot of confidence for sure. He was so shocked when he won, but you could see him just being shocked that he was even going to get a medal by the time that Adam didn't have a good skate, and he was at least going to be 3rd place. And then when Yuma didn't have a good skate, he was at least going to be 2nd place. And then all of a sudden, bro, you're Olympic champion. So what an incredible amount of emotion for him to have gone through over the course of about 25 minutes or so. Let's talk about the silver medalist here, and that was Yuma Kagiyama, who was not able to duplicate what he did in the men's short program in the team event where he won. He had a step out after his triple axel, which you feel like once he gets through the quad sow and the quad toe, triple toe, you kind of feel like he's good, but instead he stepped out of that triple axel. He still ended up with 103 points to finish ahead of a clean Adam in the short program. Came into the free skate with a great opportunity to get at least a silver. Again, he has not skated this turned on free skate clean all season, and he did not skate it clean again here. The quads were just not working for him in this performance. He has not done the quad flip in competition all season. It's something that he's left out and really kind of focused on trying to skate clean. Still had issues skating clean. Was landing some good quad flips here. And from my understanding, was sort of maybe pressured by his dad to put the flip back in to try to compete with Ilia, which it's understandable. I even talked about after the 2024 Worlds when Yuma skated really well, but that was Ilia's first World Championship, and he skated lights out, balls to the wall. And I remember saying in that recap episode that Yuma could compete with Ilia, but that would require him getting that quadruple flip consistent and potentially putting it in the short program, which he would not have needed to do. We have seen him score perfectly well to compete with Ilia without it, but he definitely needed a 4th quad in his free skate in order to be competitive. Now with Ilia having programs of 7 quads, really there was not anything that Yuma could do technically to really compete. So the path forward really was what they were trying to do this season and just stick to a simpler quad lineup and skate clean. Even though like I said, he hadn't really skated clean, I feel like that was the better strategy. Hindsight's always 20/20, but going for the quad flip here did not pay off. He fell on it. He had issues on 2 of his other quads. He only got the quad toe, triple toe clean in this performance. And I got to be honest, after this skate was done, I didn't think he had done enough to get on the podium. But when I looked at his tech score at 92 points and I was seeing what they had been giving others in PCS, I was like, well, he's going to get enough to get on the podium. And I don't even know how I feel about that. But I think because everybody else was so messy, a, a point here, there could have made the difference between any number of other skaters, especially those that were directly underneath this podium in fourth and fifth slots. They definitely had an opportunity to have gotten on this podium with one less mistake somewhere, even a small mistake like in a spin or a level here and there. But for Yuma, he still got his levels on his elements. He still got level fours on every step sequence on his step sequence and on every spin, which helped tremendously. And his triple jumps, he was able to complete well. So even with the three mistakes that he had in his program, he was able to do enough in a very messy field to salvage the silver medal. And for the second Olympics in a row, we get Yuma Kagiyama, Olympic silver medalist. I don't know if he's going to Worlds or not. I don't know if he's going to continue or not. I hope if he does go to Worlds, we could see this program clean just one time. I think it would just be such a moment if he could go clean, even if he just did triples. I would love to see it clean just once. And we've only got one more opportunity, and that's even if he goes to Worlds. All right, let's talk about Shun Sato, who is our bronze medalist, who I toyed with in the preview. Like, do I go Shun Sato? Do I go Cal Muir? And I just felt like there was going to be chaos somewhere on the podium. And there was. I just didn't predict it for the right medal. I was thinking it was going to be the bronze that was going to be the chaos. Instead, it was the gold. But Shun skated so well in the team event, couldn't quite duplicate it in either program here, but did enough, again, in a messy field to get onto the podium. And this is why in men's figure skating, you are never out of it. This man was ninth coming out of the short program after he had an issue with his quad toe and was only able to get a double toe off in his combo, losing some points by not getting that triple. He also had a lot of level issues in the short program as well. Got level 3s on just about everything except for one spin. He got a level 4 on, so lost some points there. Came out in the free skate and did so much better. Not quite as good as he did in the team event. He got all the way to his last jumping pass, which was a triple Lutz, and had an issue on the landing on that. But everything else was good. No edge calls, no cue calls, a couple level issues, but really did very well. In fact, I was going to feel so bad for him to finish fourth because that looked like where he was going to end up at the end of the day. And he was so stunned, crying just tears and tears of happiness to have gotten on the podium. His coach was just going bananas. His coach is always so excited. I love his enthusiasm to get on the podium. And yet again, Japanese men get two men on the podium at the Olympics. They did in 2022, getting Yuma Kagiyama and Shoma Uno, and then again in 2018, getting Shoma Uno and Yuzuru Hanyu onto the podium. So they are continuing a streak here of very, very strong Japanese men's skating. All right, let's talk about that dreaded position after the podium, fourth place, and that was Junhwa Cha of South Korea. And there were so many people after the short program that were really feeling as though Junhwan got underscored in the short program, particularly in his program components. And he ended up with a really good score for him, 92.72. But really, what I would say was the bigger deal was his triple axel in the short program, where he got a cue call on it. Remember, he popped that triple axel in the team event. Maybe there was a little bit of hesitation. I feel like in both events, he took an awful long time setting up for that triple axel. Did land it, obviously, here in the short program, but getting that quarter call cost him a couple of precious points, and he lost bronze by a point. That definitely would have been the difference between him winning the bronze medal and not. Now, again, you could look at a lot of other places. He fell on his quad toe in the free skate, which it's been so rare. I feel like that we have seen Junwan land both quads in his free skate. That's why I was always questioning the decision for him to go for two quads in the short program, which he tried on multiple occasions. And I don't remember it ever going well. But it's been kind of like that in the free skate a lot too, where he would land one and not land the other. So he did fall on that. Had he got it around, stepped out of it, a lesser mistake, that also would have been enough to make up just a 1 point gap. He got a level 3 on his step sequence in the short program. That wouldn't have quite made up a full point, but probably would have been about 8/10 of a point. And then in the free skate, his second triple axel that he did in combination with the double axel, it got another Q on it. And again, that lost over a point there also could have made the difference. So any little less mistake here or there in either program was the difference. He was 5th 4 years ago in Beijing, so he moves up one space, and this is the best that we have seen him at this season. Really, hopefully he'll go to Worlds and get on the podium there. He's so close, and it's been nice to see him return to that form that we saw him in the 22-23 season. But it's tough to be 4th, and it's tough to be a point away as well. But again, so tremendously well skated and really in both programs, especially in comparison to kind of what we saw here. In 5th place, huge surprise, Steven Gogolev, who, again, 11 months ago, we would not have expected for Gogolev to even make the team to go to the Olympics. He was a non-factor. Roman, who hasn't inspired a lot of confidence, Roman Sadovsky was who everyone expected to make the Canadian team. He was really the guy after Keegan Messing retired. Again, underwhelming a lot at times, but far more than what we had seen out of Gogolev or Wesley Chu or any of the other Canadian men in the last couple of seasons. And he just came out this year completely revitalized under Benoit and does himself a real solid here by finishing 5th. And he's another one that if you were to look at his protocols in the free skate, you could find a couple of points where he could have gotten a surprise bronze medal. He was just a little over a point behind bronze. He had a spin in the short program and a spin in the free skate that were level 2s. Again, lost points there. And like so many of the men, they lost steam as the program went on. And he, like Shun Sato, like so many others, that last jumping pass ended up with not an ideal landing and negative GOE. That triple loop, that could have also made the difference in him getting a bronze medal. But still, 5th place is an incredible finish. I think just top 10 would have been an incredible finish from what we have seen out of the Canadian men. If Gogolev does anything near this at Worlds next month, he's going to be in the top 10, and Canada is going to have 2 men go to Worlds for the first time in a couple of years, and that would be tremendous for them. So really just huge kudos to Steven and his team for the way that he performed at these Olympics across all 4 programs that he was in. In 6th place here was Peter Gummenik of the neutral athletes. His programs here, technically pretty strong. He's got a huge arsenal of quads. The second mark, the composition, the presentation is, for me, a little odd and a little lacking. And I think he was scored appropriately for that. I didn't find either of his programs to be particularly memorable, but he did move up quite a bit in the standings. And even when he went in his free skate earlier in the day, I would not have expected that it was going to hold up to be 4th. But again, so many people that came later just really faltered with very poor free skates and allowed him to move up quite considerably. In 7th place, and disappointingly so, was Adam Siohimfa. If you told me that he finished 7th before the Olympics, I would not have batted an eye. The disappointing part is he was in a podium position after the short program and wasn't able to hang on to it. I have been very critical of Adam's program layout in his short program for the last season and a half. He came out in the 2023-24 season with a quad Lutz and this arsenal of quads that we had not seen from him. And it completely transformed his career at that point. He went from sort of an okay middle of the road skater to competing for European titles and world titles. And then in the following season, was not able to keep up with that consistency, had a lot of injury issues in that next season. And the Lutz was one of the jumps that was really bothering him. And it was one of the jumps that wasn't consistent. And so even as this season started and we started to see that same issue with the Lutz jump, I was like, can we just take the Lutz out of the program and just do clean quad toe, maybe a quad salchow, and just be clean? And that's a strategy they actually did here in the short program. And guess what? That was the best short program of his career. It was a personal best with the quad toe, triple toe, and the quad salchow in the second half. Didn't have to go and do the Lutz and try to come from behind. He just went out there and skated clean, and it was so good to see. And then in the free skate, of course, he puts the Lutz in the free skate. I don't know how it was going in practice, but it didn't go well here. Neither did really any of his quads outside of one of his quad toes that he did in combination. The other three did not go well, and it really drug down his program. I saw a lot of people really confused about the whole shirt thing and the shirt reveal halfway through. Look, I've seen this program many times. I'm just as confused as you are. I've never understood exactly what that was supposed to do. I don't hate the part 1, part 2 short program free skate. I feel like he did that a couple of years ago also. But I feel like I connected to those programs a little bit better than the programs that he's done this season. Again, he's not performed them well most of the time, and so it's a little bit harder to connect with him anyway. You just felt really bad for him because he was in a podium position, and he has been one of the top skaters of this quad, and at times has just been brilliant and just not here. And unfortunately for him, ended up 7th here after that rough free skate. All right, 8th place. Let's talk about Ilia. So I was definitely one of the many. In fact, I don't know anybody who predicted anyone to win gold here except for Ilia. And I want to preface this by talking a little bit about Ilia's dominance, because if you watch figure skating all the time, you understand coming into this how he was such a big favorite. But if you just watch skating casually every 4 years or the Olympics, or maybe you catch the world championships here and there, it's difficult to know just how dominant that Ilia has been. But he has not lost a competition, as I said in the previews, since the fall of the 2023-24 season. And most of the time, it hasn't even been close. He won Worlds by 30 points in 2024. And he won Worlds by 30 points last year. At Grand Prix Final this year, he was actually 14 points behind going into the free skate after trying a quad axel in the short program and not going well. And he still won Grand Prix Final by 30 points. So there was a 40-point shift from the short program to the free skate. The technical arsenal that he has, nobody can compete with. Nobody can. And it's so high that even when he makes mistakes, other competitors cannot compete with him either. He has to have a catastrophic skate that before this free skate we had not seen in this Olympic quad. And so, of course, we all expected him to win. And even when he went out to skate in the free skate, he only needed 186 points to win. The last time that he scored that would have been the 2024 Grand Prix Final, where he finished second in the free skate behind Yuma, but still won. So it had been a long time since he'd even skated that poorly. And that was a skate where he tried to do 6 quads for the first time in the free skate. A lot of them got calls. There was really no performance in that free skate. I remember it very well. Oftentimes in the fall, Ilia doesn't even put forth his heavy-duty program. he skates kind of a watered down content until he usually gets to Grand Prix final, and then he sort of brings out the big guns. Let's talk about the short program first, and then I want to talk about the free skate, and then I'll talk about all the different conspiracy theories that people have put out there, including what Ilia has said himself, didn't skate well here. In the short program, he was fine. Absolutely fine. Had Yuma skated clean, Yuma might have beaten him in the short program by a hair, but he got 108 points in the short. It was better than what he did in the team event, and it all seemed like all was fine. What I will say is I did find it incredibly strange that they had 2 days in between the men's short program and the men's free skate. Oftentimes, especially before they had a team event, you would have a short program, a day off, and then the free skate. With the team event, sometimes it has caused that schedule to sort of go away, and so that now you have sometimes where you might have a free skate of one discipline one day and then a short program of another discipline the next day. So you may not get a day in between individual disciplines, or you may not get a day in between competitions. But I can't remember a time where we've had 2 days in between competitions. It seems like an awful long time, and we have the pairs going back to back. It just seemed weird to me that they didn't have the men go on Thursday night. Instead, have the pairs go on Saturday and on Monday, so they too would get a day off in between. So 2 days in between is definitely abnormal, not just for the Olympics, but abnormal for what these athletes are used to doing also. A lot of time to think in between that time. The free skate starts, and of course it's been pretty poorly skated event, so much so that, again, Ilia only needs 186 points to win. And I tweeted right before that he just needed his B minus C plus game that day. And he goes out, he lands the first quad lutz seemingly fine, and he popped the quad axle. That was definitely concerning because Ilia doesn't usually pop jumps like that, especially the quad axle. He'll over-rotate it, fall on it, step out of it, but just popping it all together, usually that's kind of in the head a little bit when you're popping a jump versus just falling on it. But even without that, Ilia did not need that quad axle to win. Nowhere close. But what he loses in that moment is the ability to land 7 quads like he wanted to do, and the ability to land the quad axle at the Olympics like he wanted to do. But again, what's the goal here? Is the goal to win, or is the goal to make history? He goes and he lands the next jump. So again, you think he's good and he's back on track. And then after that, things unravel. And the quad loop has been, up until this season, a fairly inconsistent jump for him. It's always been the most difficult quad for him. And so even when he popped that into a double, again, you don't feel good because it's not going well. But he still has enough points in his program to still be able to win, or worst case scenario, salvage a medal. But Ilia's programs are very high risk, high reward. Everybody can do 3 combinations in a program. And of course, you have 3 jumping passes at the end that could be used at the end of a program to get a bonus. You can't do like Alina Zagitova did years ago in the 2018 Olympics, where she just skated around for 2 minutes and did all of her jumps in that bonus period. There's a cap on 3. Only 3 jumping passes can get that bonus. But Ilia stacks his programs so that all 3 of his combos are in the back, and they're all in the bonus, and they're all incredibly difficult combinations. Had he landed the quad loop, the quad axle earlier in the program, then missing a combination or 2 in the second half of his program would not have been as crucial. But losing the points from those meant that he really needed to get those combos in the back half of his program. And I'm sure that had to be weighing on his mind. Everybody handles that kind of adversity very differently. I remember Michelle Kwan missed a triple toe in her free skate at the 1996 World Championships. So she throws in a triple toe late in her program to get that last triple. And very well could have been the difference between her winning the event as she did and potentially losing that event to Lu Chen, who came in second. We call it jump math. When somebody misses a combination somewhere in the first half of their program, they try to add those points on somewhere else. So this is what happened to Amber Glenn in the team event. In the team event, Amber missed her opening combination, her triple Lutz, triple toe that she does as a second jumping pass in her program. She messed up on the Lutz and couldn't get the triple toe off. So ideally, you'd like to be able to tack that triple toe in on the end of another jump somewhere. Amber doesn't really train another triple combo. She did add a double toe onto another jump so that she could get that third combination and get those points. But a triple toe versus a double toe is a big change in point totals. So she wasn't able to make up for that. Something similar happened to Isabeau Levito at the 2024 World Championships. She fell on her opening triple Lutz, which was to be her triple combination, and didn't tack on again a triple toe later in her program. She ended up fourth. And it's a lesson in jump math. And the hope is that coaches sort of train their skaters, what do we do in those kind of circumstances? But in Ilia's circumstance, there's really nothing he can do because he doesn't have another jump in which to do a combination if he misses one at the end, because all of his are backloaded at the very last ones. And because of that, there was a tremendous amount of pressure on him in that moment to land all three of those combinations. So what he planned to do was a quad Lutz Euler triple flip, a quad toe triple toe, and a quad Salchow triple axel. And his world record that he got at Grand Prix final, those last three jumping passes were 63 points. Instead, what happens here is he fell on the quad Lutz. He ended up adding the Euler triple flip onto the quad toe and landed that. And then he doubled the quad Salchow. The quad Lutz fall was also costly because it was the second time he did that quad Lutz. And if you don't do it in combination, you get what's called a repetition violation, where you lose 30% of the base value of that jump as well. 63 points lost just on those three jumping passes. And unfortunately for Ilia, it was nowhere near enough to even salvage a podium spot at that point, and he ended up 15th. And he was caught with the hot mic and the kiss and cry saying, if they had sent me to Beijing, this wouldn't have happened. I'll give him a pass because the emotions are so high in that moment. But Ilia is also on the record as saying that had he been picked for Beijing 4 years ago, that this would probably be his last Olympics. But it brings up all of this revisionist history again from people who said, Jason shouldn't have made the team 4 years ago. It should have been Ilia. Or Vincent shouldn't have made the team 4 years ago. It should have been Ilia. And the right team was picked in 2022. The right team was picked. Ilia didn't have the body of work. He'd had one senior event that year. He was on the junior circuit. And he didn't even have tech minimums for Worlds from that senior event. I honestly cannot remember if he had tech minimums for the Olympics or not. They had to send him to an event in Europe to get tech minimums for Worlds. World tech minimums are higher than Olympic tech minimums. So it's possible he had minimums for the Olympics. I can't remember. But even so, they picked the correct team. I didn't care for the narrative that a lot of the old school media was bringing up again, coming into nationals and even into Skate America this season about, Ilia should have been picked 4 years ago. I don't like them bringing up that narrative because they're bringing up that narrative to Ilia as well. And we've got to move past that at this point. And there's no guarantee that if Ilia had been in Beijing 4 years ago, that the results are any different here. There's no guarantee. We had this conversation in my Olympic preview episode with Allison and Jill of Keep the Flame Alive, specifically talking about the pair selection for the U.S. this season. Should they have taken Chen and Hao, or should they have taken Shin and Naj, because Shin and Naj are, quote, the future? And Jill said, since when has the Olympics been about picking the future? It's about picking who's good right now. And of course, Ilia went on to Worlds that year, and he finished 9th, I believe, at Worlds. Didn't have a great free skate. Did decent in the short program. Didn't have a great free skate. It was his first Worlds. But I don't like that narrative. I have zero issue with Ilia bringing it up. I don't particularly care for other people taking it and then running with it. I think there's a lot of things that you could look at. There's no one thing that causes this. There is a tremendous amount of media attention in the Olympic season. Figure skating, while I love it, is not a very popular sport. You're not going to turn on ESPN and see anybody talking about figure skating. Unless somebody's doing a piece on a local skater for the local news, you're not going to hear about it on your local news either. But in an Olympic season, the media presence and the coverage is so much greater. The press calls this season had way more people on it than they have had in the previous years. There was way more media at nationals. There were a lot more influencers and athletes from other Summer Olympics, and there's just so much media everywhere. And I've seen pictures of media at the Olympics, and it's just insane. It's just everything times 1,200. And Ilia's coached by his parents. They haven't had a skater at this level at the Olympics before. They haven't. And yes, Rafael Aturian is part of the coaching team. I don't know how involved he is. He shows up at Worlds, and here at the Olympics, we don't ever see him with Ilia in any other competitions. And even so, he was the coach of Nathan Chen, who had a similar, not great, couple of performances at the 2018 Olympics. And part of it was Nathan was always moving around the elements of his short program that season. And basically told Roth, I'm doing the quad lutz. Roth didn't feel good about it, but ultimately that's what Nathan decided. And it didn't go well. And Ilia said last year at Worlds that he wanted to have the same layout and be comfortable with it for the Olympics. And in the free skate, he has. But at Grand Prix final, and then even here going into the team event, he tinkered with his short program layout, wanting to put the quad axle in there to try to get the record for the short program, or to try to get the quad axle landed and out of the way so he could be the first person to land at the Olympics here. And I feel like the quad axle became such a huge distraction for him. And when he didn't land it in the free skate, in his mind, he's thinking, I'm not going to be able to land this jump at this Olympics. I'm not going to be able to land 7 quads. And the fascination with that jump, I feel like kind of got in his head. And from my understanding, so much of the talk in the media has been about the quad axle as well, that they've been kind of obsessed with it. Again, those of us that watch skating all the time, like, we've seen the quad axle many times. Like, it's a great, amazing jump, but it doesn't define who Ilia is. It got him on the map, but it doesn't define who Ilia is. And he would have been fine in that free skate with that pop. But the rest of it, he just didn't recover. And I think the combination of all of those things is sort of what led to this here. There's not just any one thing. It's a combination of them. He looked very uncomfortable going out there at the start of his program. But I will say again, my very first media call that I was on with Ilia was in the lead up to the 2024 Nationals. And Christine Brennan asked him a question. And I remember it because I had a similar question jotted down on my notebook that I was too afraid to ask. I get imposter syndrome a lot of times when I'm in with bigwig media. But she asked him, Ilia, do you want to be the guy? Do you want all the attention? Do you want to be the face of this sport? And he was like, yes, I want it all. Give it to me. I want to be that guy. And maybe he didn't know what that entailed exactly at this level, but at least in that moment, he thought he wanted it. And in other media calls that I have been on, he's always really embraced it. And I hope that this is a learning experience for him that just turns him into a better person, more importantly than anything else. And there's so many fantastic skaters that have never won an Olympic gold medal. Now, Ilia's career isn't over. He could be back in 4 years, or he couldn't. You never know. Nothing's promised. Kurt Browning came into the 92 Olympics having won 3 world championships in a row. And I believe he finished 6th at that Olympics. And he was the first skater to ever have a ratified quadruple toe loop. He was the original quad guy. And then he won another world championships in 93, went into 94 again. Didn't even get on the podium. He was 5th at that Olympics. Fantastic skater. Michelle Kwan, one of the best to ever skate, has 2 Olympic medals, but not gold. Tara Lipinski and Sarah Hughes do. Could not hold a candle to her for the most part. Sometimes it's just not your day. And in a sport like skating, being tight, being a little nervous, and you're jumping in the air and spinning 4 times or more, it can throw you off. It was heartbreaking to watch because he has been the guy, and he still is the guy. He just wasn't the guy on Friday the 13th. All right. Let's finish up here. In 9th place was Daniel Grassel of Italy, and he finished 4th after the short program and definitely had himself in a podium position going into the free skate and had a very underwhelming free skate. This I'm becoming a Pope free skate has been quite the talk from a lot of people. And I thought at Grand Prix final, it did really well. It worked. But if he didn't land the jumps, this program just doesn't work at all. And I just thought it was such a buzzkill, frankly, in that final group. Of course, the whole group ended up being a buzzkill except for Shaddarov. But yeah, it just didn't work here. He finishes as the higher of finishing Italian man. He's going to leave these games with that team bronze, but definitely underachieved here in this men's event. In 10th place was Nika Agazzi of Georgia, coming off of a big win at Europeans. He was one of that in that long conversation of skaters that could be kind of in that bronze medal position. But again, just very underwhelming here. He was 15th after the short program, which is definitely not where he wanted to be. He did a little bit better in the free skate, but again, I just found him to be really underwhelming in both performances here. Outside of the opening fall in his free skate, the rest of it was fine. It was definitely the better of the 2 programs, but did not bring the spark that he had at Europeans to the Olympics. But a top 10 finish, nonetheless, is still a really good finish for him. In 11th place was Kevin Amos, and here's a guy you just never know really what you're going to get. He did bring the Lady Gaga back to the short program. He had talked about changing it, but he ended up sticking with it. Did really well in the short program. He was one that just had a little bit of negative GOE on a spin. Otherwise, all of his jumping elements were positive, which was huge for Kevin. So getting over 90 points and being 7th place, he was kind of in that mix. I mean, he has the ability with that Bolero free skate to just go absolute bananas. And he could have been in the conversation for a medal, but just right off the top in that free skate, did a triple toe instead of a quad toe. And he doesn't have a lot of quads in his arsenal, so he really needs both of them to really be competitive on a technical level. Artistically, he did very well here. He was one of the higher scoring skaters in that program component mark and the free skate. I've always really enjoyed this Bolero program that he does, and I'm one who does not like Bolero programs pretty much ever. But this one I did, and I think it was smart to bring it back. Wasn't maybe the Olympic moment that he would have been hoping for, but he seemed really thrilled with his performances here. And for as up and down as he is, just be top of the middle of the heap, I think is perfectly okay for him. In 12th place was Andrew Torgashev. And this is where men's ordinals are so crazy because he was 8th in the short program, personal best. He was 9th in the free skate, personal best, but finished 12th overall because of so much crazy movement all around him. But I gotta say, coming out of last season, especially before the free skate at Worlds, Torgs looked like he was headed to the Olympics. He'd had such a great fall, really great nationals, fantastic short program at Worlds, and then the Worlds free skate was a disaster. He ended up 22nd after he was somewhere in the top 12 after the short program, and just fell all the way to 22nd. And then this fall, he was terrible. I mean, let's just be honest. He was terrible. Coming into nationals, he had to be in a podium position to even be in the conversation to come here. He had been outdone by Tomoki Hiwatashi at that point, and of course Jason Brown, who everybody expected to be here. And Andrew did exactly what he needed to do at nationals. He was great. Ended up with silver for the second year in a row. And he came here and did what he couldn't do at Worlds last year, which was skate 2 really good programs. And for me, like, so much of the men were like, what could have been, for Andrew, he skated the best 2 programs of his career, and that's exactly what you want at the Olympics. Really love the footwork sequence in his short program. His free skate, I think, is another good vehicle for him as well, and was really happy for him. He's had some questionable things to say on social media in between the fall and nationals, and has fallen out of favor with some people. But on a purely, like, what he has done on the ice, very, very impressive. In 13th place was Cal Mura, who is someone that I wasn't surprised to see in 13th. Someone that I was hoping to see higher in the standings because, like so many of the other men, the potential is there for him. And you could see flashes of it at times in both programs, but could not keep it together, especially in the short program. I was afraid he wasn't even going to make the free skate. He was 22nd after the short program, so he made the cutoff. He needed to be in the top 24. But it started up again right off the top. He's supposed to do a quad Salchow triple toe, and he did a double Salchow triple toe. It's not illegal to do that, but he got 6 points for that element, and he lost just a tremendous amount of base value by not getting the quad off, and then he fell on his quad toe later in the program. Also had some level issues as well. I thought he rebounded really nicely in the free skate. It's not what he's capable of doing. Not unlike what we saw him do at 4 Continents. He actually won 4 Continents a month ago with a really strong short program and a shaky free skate, but just enough to kind of stay ahead of everybody. Here in the free skate, he actually landed that quad loop right off the bat. And I was like, oh my gosh, how many times have we seen Cal land the quad loop? It has not been a good, consistent jump for him. So again, I thought that was going to be like a good sign of things to come. Then he fell on the quad Salchow. That was next. Again, he did pretty good here. I would love to see him get some more consistency in the coming years. He's still very young. Cal is one of the youngest skaters here. He's just 19. And if he could ever find some consistency, he could compete with almost anybody. In 14th place was Lucas Bridgke of Switzerland. And his programs usually go however his quad toes go. And that's how it's been the last couple of seasons for him. And that's how it was here in the short program. The quad toe was not his friend. And that definitely brought down his score. He also had a couple of issues with 2 of his spins, which is very uncharacteristic for him. In the free skate, it was a completely different story. The quads were working in the free skate. He was one that was doing great until those last two jumping passes that he had issues on, his triple lutz and then doubling his triple flip. But I really like this program. He always has very unique programs. He has a very unique point of view. He really does research into how to make sure that the programs that he does are authentic to the piece of music that he uses. Some people don't like it. Some people do. I always really enjoy Lucas's programs. I just find them to be programs that only he could do. And for me, that's a mark of a really good program, is you can't imagine another skater doing it. Just you. In 15th place was Matteo Rizzo of Italy. Definitely couldn't duplicate the same moment that he had in the team event. And kind of like Lucas, just couldn't get his quad together in either program. Unfortunately for him, everything else in both programs was really beautiful. Just the quads being problematic. Really do love this interstellar free skate. I'm sure it's going to be in contention for one of my programs for my season's best list at the end of the season. I know he would have liked to have had a better showing here at this Olympics in the men's event, but the team event was just such a moment. It was going to be so difficult for him to really duplicate that a second time. All right, let me run through some of the rest of these here. In 16th place was Alexander Salevko of Estonia. He skated to Prince in his short program, which I was a little surprised because we knew that there were some copyright issues with Laureate and Legoc in the dance event. From what I understand, is Salevko asked for permission and didn't receive an answer, and so skated to it anyway. Hopefully it won't be a problem. It's such a fun program. Unfortunately for him, he landed his quad toe and he landed his triple axel, and he gets to his triple lutz triple toe combo and he fell on his triple lutz, and that was such a bummer. This program is still so fun even with the fall. And I thought his free skate was just really pretty strong. It was just, again, like so many of the men, the last couple of jumping passes just had issues on both of them and cost a lot of points by getting an under rotation call on a triple lutz and doubling his triple salchow. But really enjoyed his program in the free skate as well. In 17th place was Boying Jin of China. And in the short program, he was very strong. I thought probably a disadvantage of him going a little bit earlier in the competition. His jumps were clean. He was one of the 6 that didn't have any negative elements in the short program. The free skate was not as successful, and unfortunately, that drug him down in the standings. He was 20th in the free skate. This is probably the last time we're going to see Bo Yang. Maybe he goes to Worlds. I definitely don't expect him to continue on after the season. His best days have been behind him, but at times this Olympic cycle, it was hard to watch, and he has definitely rebounded from those days, and he seemed really happy with his skates here, and that's what I was really glad to see. In 18th place was Denis Vasilyev of Latvia. It's been tough to watch Denis this season. He was separated from his coach, Stefan, for a large part of the season because of some funding issues with the Latvian Federation. And so he hasn't been able really to practice as much and get comfortable with his programs as much. And that's a real bummer because Denis is usually such a beautiful skater. He struggles at times with the jumps, especially the more difficult jumps. But this wasn't his best showing here. He was one of the ones who didn't really have a lot of movement in the standings. 17th in the short, 18th in the free to finish 18th overall. But I'm glad he made it here, and he's got a coach, and hopefully this isn't it. Hopefully we'll see more of Denis. I'm also going to bring up in 20th place was Maxim Naumov of the U.S., the 3rd U.S. skater. 14th in the short program. Love his short program. Was very strong. Just a little scratchy on his triple axel. Unfortunately, the free skate was a real struggle. Kind of reminded me of a couple of other free skates from Max that I've seen this season where he's just really struggled on a lot of the landings. He had 2 falls in his free skate as well. And unfortunately finished 20th. He is not supposed to be at Worlds. They gave that spot to Jason. We'll see if Jason actually goes to Worlds or not. If not, then I think Max is the alternate. And then we could potentially see him there should Jason not go. But I hope that we do see Jason, just because I don't want Jason's last performance that we see him, that awful performance that we saw him at Nationals. But even so, I think Max, coming from what he came from a year ago, losing his parents, it's amazing that he's here. Even if he didn't have that tremendous loss, it's amazing that he was here. Max was always like fourth place, just the perennial fourth place guy at Nationals. And so to do enough to move up to that third place spot and get to be the Olympics here is a great opportunity for him. Don't know what the future holds for him. He took on his parents' coaching students, and there's some thoughts that maybe this is his last competitive season and he switches to coaching. I don't know if we continue to see him. I really like the strides that we saw in his artistic side of his skating this season, and I would love to see him continue to develop that if he chooses to go on. All right, let's talk about a Pamchenko Award for the men's. I mean, I think it's hard to really give it to anybody outside of Mikhail, who had the best free skate of the day and pulled himself from 5th to 1st. I do think that Ilia had a very strong short program here, and you could give a Pamchenko to him for the short program. You could give a Pamchenko to June, who skated 2 really fantastic programs here, especially that short program, and that step sequence was so good. But I think I'm going to give out 2. One to Mikhail Shaidorov for pulling out his best free skate of this year and doing it at the right time. It was also a personal best free skate for him. And I'm going to give another one to Stephen Gogolev, who was a point out of bronze medal position, who just really killed it in both programs and finished 2nd in that free skate and a personal best for him. So those are my 2 Pamchenko awards for the men's event. In terms of Worlds, Ilia said today to USA Today, Christine Brennan and Phil Hirsch, that he will be going to Worlds. He's also going to be in the exhibition, as I would expect him to be in a few days after the women's event. And I expect that we'll see Ilia bounce back. I'll be interested to see if Mikhail goes to Worlds. I would think so. I mean, I feel like a lot of times it's a lot for the skater when they win the Olympics to turn around and go straight into Worlds. But, he doesn't have a world title. We'll see. I don't know. We'll see. But as of now, Ilia is planning to go, which I think is good news for the U.S. because had he not gone, and then you would be depending on a lot of inconsistent men to try to maintain 3 spots, and that's kind of scary. Not that that's in any way what Ilia has to be concerned with, but I think he's eager for that not to be the last performance of his season, and I get it. All right. I feel like that was more talking than what I had planned on, but there's a lot to say. As a whole, like everybody, I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked. And I don't know why. I've seen a lot of sports in my life, and that's why they play the games. That's why they skate on the day, because anything can literally happen. And there was a lot of talk about, is this the biggest upset in figure skating? And then there's this stupid people talking about, is this the biggest upset in sports ever? I mean, obviously not. Like, come on. I hate recency bias. From what I understand, the biggest upset in sports ever is Buster Douglas knocking out Mike Tyson in boxing. I think pretty sure that's like the biggest upset of all time. The biggest upset in Olympic history, again, this is just absurd. For most of the time, people would say that would be the U.S. beating Russia in 1980 in Lake Placid in Miracle on Ice. A lot of people would say that's the biggest upset of all time in the Olympics. So, like, come on, people, with all of this dramatic, it's so stupid. It's so dumb. It's not the biggest upset ever. It is up there in terms of figure skating upsets at the Olympics, for sure. But this all of the drama is just insane. Okay. Thanks for listening to the podcast. You can find me on all the socials at Ice Skate Podcast. Pairs is up next, and I'll be back to recap the pairs event, and then after that it'll be ladies, and it'll be over. It's crazy. As soon as it has begun, it will soon come to an end. And I said after the men's free skate that this has been like the most emotional Olympics of my life. Like, the team event just brought out so many different emotions with Cam and O'Shea and Matteo Rizzo and the Italian team and the Japan and US going down to the very last skate. And then the craziness of the ice dance event with, should have been Chalk and Bates, should it have been the French team? Should Gillis and Poirier have won the free dance? All of the emotions of that. And then the shock of this free skate and the men's, it's just like, I'm pretty sure I have a brand new gray hair in the front of my head. Like, I cannot take any more drama. Like, I just need the pairs to just be like a good palate cleanser to just like calm everything down. Nothing crazy. And like it was last Olympics, just like that good palate cleanser after that crazy women's event. It's what I need from pairs right now, and if we want to up the drama back up in the women's, that's okay. But I thank goodness we had a day off. Oh my gosh. I was just like, I can't take it. I just can't take it. It has been so wild. I don't know if it's because I have a podcast this year or what, but this has been just a crazy emotional roller coaster of an Olympics, and we still have 2 more events. All right, guys, tell me what your thoughts were on the men's event, and I'll be back with the pairs recap before you know it. Good night.